Welcome back to Educator.com. In this lesson we're going to take a look at the order of operations. As we'll see, the order of operations is a great way that we can start combining numbers and really figuring out what we should do first. So this will involve things like what should we do with parentheses, exponents, and when should we do our multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So, when trying to simplify a much larger expression with many different types of operations present, we have to figure out what to do first. Well, our order of operations gives us a nice roadmap on what we should be doing. The very first thing that we should do is work inside our grouping symbols. That means if you see parentheses or brackets, work inside of those first. Then move on to simplifying your exponents, so things raised to a power. Once you have both of those taken care of, move on to your multiplication and division. If you see lots of multiplication and division, say next to each other, remember to work these ones from left to right. Now you're ready to do any remaining addition and subtraction, and again, when it comes to which of those is more important, simply work those from left to right as well. One handy way that you can remember this entire list that is the order of operations is to remember PEMDAS. PEMDAS stands for parentheses, exponents, multiplication, division, addition, and subtraction. So let's write it out. A great way that you can remember these is, please excuse my dear Aunt Sally. I've often heard a lot of my students use that one to make sure they keep them all straight. So start with your parentheses, and then move on to exponents. Be very careful if you're using this to memorize what to do first, because sometimes when using it, it looks like multiplication is more important. But work these ones from left to right. The same thing applies to your addition and subtraction. Work those from left to right. Alright, not bad. Oftentimes you'll deal with a large expression that has, say, a fraction in it. Even though you might not see some grouping symbols, think of the top and bottom as their own group. That means work to simplify the numerator and get everything together up there, and work to simplify your denominator, get everything together down there, before really continuing on with the simplification process. So as a quick example, let's look at this guy. Here I have negative 2 times 5 plus 3 times a negative 2 all over negative 5 minus 3. So I'm really going to work on the top part as its own group and the bottom part as its own group. Let's see what that does. So negative 2 times 5 would give me a negative 10. 3 times that negative 2, negative 6. On the bottom in that group I have that negative 5 minus 3, so negative 8. Okay, negative 10 minus 6. Negative 16. And on the bottom I still have that negative 8. So we've really worked to really look inside each of those groups and simplify them using our order of operations in there. Now I simply have a negative 16 over a negative 8, and that is a 2. So watch for those large fractions to play a part. Let's try some examples now that we know more about the order of operations and see how we can bring these into a much simpler expression. So this one is 5 minus 2, the quantity squared, plus 1, all over negative 5. I'll also write down PEMDAS. This will act as our roadmap as we're going through the problem. So I want to look for grouping symbols or parentheses to see where I need to start. Well, that 5 minus 2 looks like a good area, so we'll do that first. 5 minus 2 is 3. Okay. About the only other grouping that I'm really concerned with is the top and bottom of the fraction. There's only one thing on the bottom, so I'm really just going to now focus on the numerator. All right, I can see that I have some exponents. I have a 3 squared in there. So now let's do that. 3 squared is 9. Okay, it's getting better. Now I want to move on to my multiplication and division. And looking at the top and bottom of the fraction individually, I don't see any multiplication or division, so I can move on. Addition and subtraction. Well, I do have some addition on the top. So we'll put those together, get 10 over a negative 5. Okay, so we're looking at 10 divided by negative 5, and now I can say that my result is a negative 2. And now this one's done. Again, you can see how we really move through that order of operations as our roadmap. In this next one, we want to evaluate a negative 12 times a negative 4/3 minus 5 times 6 divided by 3. Okay, so let's get our roadmap. I don't see too much in terms of grouping, but I do have this group of numbers over here, so let's go ahead and take care of those. Inside I have 5 times 6 divided by 3. So what should I do in there? I got multiplication and division. Well, those ones, remember, we'll work them from left to right. So on the left side there, I have multiplication, then we'll actually do the division. So 5 times 6 is a 30. Now I'll do the 30 divided by 3 and get 10. Okay, so we've taken care of that grouping. I'm just going to copy down some of these other things. And then we'll continue on. Okay, so our grouping is done. Now on to exponents, but I don't see any exponents here. So now on to multiplication and division. Well, I do have a multiplication. I got a negative 12 times a negative 4/3. Well, negative times a negative would give me a positive. Multiplying on the top, that would be a 48 all over 3. Okay, and because of my fraction there, I do have some division. I could take 48 and divide it by 3. So 16. Okay, on to addition and subtraction. 16 minus 10, 6. And now I've completely simplified this one, and I can call it done. This next one I have 12 divided by 4 times the square root of 5 minus 1. Starting with my grouping symbols and parentheses. Well, I could consider everything underneath the square root as its own little group. So let's work on simplifying that right in here. 5 minus 1 is a 4. So I have 12 divided by 4 times the square root of 4. Let's see, taking care of the square root entirely. Now I'm looking at 12 divided by 4 times 2. All right, moving on, do I see any exponents? Well, no exponents. On to multiplication and division. This is that tough one. It's tempting to say that multiplication is more important, but it's not. Simply work these guys from left to right. So in this case, we're going to do the division first. 12 divided by 4 is 3. And then we'll actually take that and multiply it by the 2 and get 6. So now this one is completely simplified. Let's look at an example that involves lots and lots of different things. So I have 8 times 4 minus 3 squared times 5 plus 2 times the absolute value of negative 1 all over a negative 3 times 2 to the third plus 1. Okay, with so many different things in here, I really have to be careful on what to do first. Well, since I'm dealing with a fraction here, I want to look at the top as its own group and the bottom as its own group and really work inside of each of those to try and simplify them. So let's look at the top for a little bit. Inside of that, I don't see any additional grouping symbols, so I'll try and do any exponents on the top. I do have a 3 squared. Let's change that into a 9. And I have the absolute value of negative 1. Might as well go ahead and take care of that as well. Okay, so we're doing a little bit of simplifying in the top. Let's see if there's any exponents in the bottom. Negative 3 times 2 cubed. I can change that into negative 3 times 8. And of course, we still have the plus 1. All right, continuing on. Looking at the top, I don't have any additional parentheses, don't have any additional exponents. Multiplication and division. I got lots of multiplication on the top. 4 times 8 would give me a 32. 9 times 5, 45. 2 times 1, 2. Okay, on to the bottom. Negative 3 times 8, negative 24, and then plus 1. All right, multiplication and division done. On to addition and subtraction. We're going to do this from left to right. So I'll do 32 minus a 45. Let's see, what do we got for there? Let's imagine our technique for combining numbers that have different signs. So I'm just subtracting these here. I get a result of 13. The one that is larger in absolute value is the negative 45, so my result is a negative 13. Okay, looking at the bottom, negative 23. Almost done. So negative 11 up top divided by negative 23. So this one's completely simplified as 11 over 23. So when dealing with multiple operations, it's really important that we do have a roadmap in order to get through all of these. Feel free to use PEMDAS so that you can keep everything in order. As you use PEMDAS, if you get down to your multiplication and division, use them left to right. And if you get down to your addition and subtraction, again, use those from left to right. Thank you for watching Educator.com.